Some people say no one ever believed 1,000 years. Well, the earliest church fathers did. I'm going to give you the historical background on why there's a controversy. It's known as Chiliasm, which is the Greek word for 1,000. And this was the dominant view in the early church, the Chiliasm. For example, we have Papias of Hierapolis, and he's one of the earliest sources of this belief, and he was a student of Polycarp, who was a disciple of John. Papias is famous for describing the millennium as a time of supernatural fertility for the earth, famously picturing the vines with 10,000 branches and grains of wheat producing massive amounts of flour, because that's what the millennium is. It's going to be like it was during the time of Adam and Eve. Justin Martyr, in his dialogue with Trypho, Justin explicitly states that while some Christians might disagree, he and many others are of the same mind, and they believe there will be a 1,000-year period in a reconstructed Jerusalem, and he viewed this as a core of Orthodox hope. Then we have Irenaeus of Lyons. This is from the Catholic, he's a Catholic saint. He's a student of Papias, and Irenaeus wrote extensively on the millennium in his Against Heresies, and he argued that the earth must be restored to its pristine state to reward the righteous before the final judgment, and he linked the 6 days of creation to 6,000-year period, followed by a Sabbath, a 1,000-year period. And then there's Tertullian, who in his writings against Marcion, he defended the idea of a physical kingdom, and he believed that after the resurrection, the saints would live in a divinely built city, the New Jerusalem, for 1,000 years. Where do they get this from? Because they're actually reading the Bible literally. Why is there an issue? Well, there's two schools of thought. One is called the Antiochian school of hermeneutics or interpretation, which, again, it's literal, it's historical. And the other was the Alexandrian school, which was, there was a guy named Philo, and then Philo influenced that, and it was Augustine taught the city of God. And so everything was then taught what's called amillennial. There is no millennium, because one of the problems with the millennium, they felt, was that it was too Jewish. You know, the possessions of Jerusalem would have to be turned over to the Jews. Again, people think how they think back then influences the thing and the foundation of what they believe. So this was then found its way into Catholic theology. And then when the Reformers came along, because the Reformers came out of the Catholic theology, they kept the covenant theology, non-literal interpretation of Scripture, which is Jerusalem doesn't really mean Jerusalem, okay? It means it everywhere else, but in the end times, Jerusalem really doesn't mean Jerusalem, okay? All that became a problem in 1948 when the nation of Israel became a nation again, and all of a sudden they were in possession of Jerusalem, fulfilling Bible prophecy. And this is actually finding its way into politics today. It's finding its way into the churches. We're seeing it. If you're paying attention, you'll see it going on right now. Just so you understand, it's a very literal thing. It's clearly taught in the Scriptures. The only way you get around it is by making things mean what they don't really mean.